The option of adding DSLR and GoPro video time-lapse footage into our productions has opened up a whole new world of possibilities for us. The process itself has also been simplified. To begin, let's create a new event for our media. And we'll call it something like time-lapse. Next, we need to create a timeline for our project, and I'm just going to use the shortcut for that. New project, we'll call that time-lapse as well. And we'll ask the system to put our media into the event we've just created. For convenience, I'm going to import my media directly from the Finder level into my timeline. But before I do this, I need to tell Final Cut Pro how to go about processing the media. For that, we go to the Final Cut Pro heading and select Preferences. Let's take a look at some of the options that are available to us in the Import pane of Preferences. Firstly, it's always a good idea to copy your files to the Final Cut Events folder to keep your system organized. But it also means, of course, that you have a copy of your media, and that's always important. We can ask the system to create optimized media, and by doing so we'll be instructing Final Cut Pro to create Apple ProRes 422 media. It's not necessary to do this because Final Cut Pro has no problem at all working with the raw media. We also need to instruct the software to import single frames during the import process. For this, we go to the Editing tab, and down here we just need to make sure that we're importing single frames. And I guess in a way what we're really telling the system to do is to import an image sequence as one would have done in legacy versions of Final Cut Pro. You can completely ignore the metadata files that are created by your camera. Final Cut Pro doesn't need them at all. But let's go and take a look at what kind of resolutions we're working with on the original media. I'm going to select the top frame, and for the purposes of this exercise I'll just select Shift and go and select a whole bunch of clips and pop them straight onto my timeline and let Final Cut Pro get on with the business of importing them. Rendering will be required because the media needs to be converted to comply with broadcast HD specs. And if we call up our project properties, we can see that indeed media is being converted to match our timeline, which is 1920 by 1080p. This is a background process and it shouldn't really affect your workflow. More often than not, you'd want to take the individual clips that make up your timeline and compound them or nest them into a single clip so that you can add filters or color grading or maybe even a time warp effect. But before we do that, it's always recommended that you duplicate your sequence to leave the original intact. We're not going to duplicate the media because we're happy for the system to continue looking at the original media that we brought in from the Finder. Double-click on the new sequence to make it the active sequence. Select all of the clips in your timeline, keyboard shortcut Command A, and then using the keyboard shortcut Option G, you can create a new compound clip out of them. Final Cut Pro will place the compound clip in your media browser, and that's good news because it means you can use this compound clip in any project that you're working on in the future. If we look in the media browser, we can see that Final Cut Pro has created a new compound clip for us, which we can use at any time. Getting back to our timeline, if we select the compound clip and open up the effects browser, we can apply an effect to the clip, safe in the knowledge that the same effect will be applied to all the individual clips that make up the timeline. It's worth mentioning here that this process only applies to media captured as time-lapse on GoPro and DSLR cameras. For standard media imports, you can access these directly through the import window.